And I
Oh,
think we
I
might
think
be
we're
live
live.
now.
I think we're
We are
live.
live
Well,
now. Go ahead.
okay. Well, welcome everyone. It's good to see you this morning. We're back in business, and Paul Young and I are going to talk about the market, what we've seen so far. We've really only been up for 2 weeks tomorrow, but or is it 3 weeks, Paul? I guess
the time flies by. It's hard to keep
I
track.
think it's 3 weeks actually.
3 weeks feels like 2 months.
Yeah, I think it's 3 weeks actually. So I'm mistaken. So what we're going to do is I'll sort of start with some anecdotal information, and then Paul will go through the data that we have. And of course, if you have any questions, you can put it on Facebook Live, and we will look to see what your questions are on Facebook. So so far, it's been an interesting restart, I would say. Since I've been doing this, which is quite a while now, your way of selling a property in Brooklyn and Manhattan as well, of course, is to have an open house. My strategy was always an hour and a half, pack people in, create buzz, and start getting offers right from the get-go. Well, we can't do that. So everything is by appointment now. We are doing open houses by appointment. So no one can be in a property with another buyer at the same time. And it's really, in my mind, changed the dynamic of what it's like to sell a property now. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we have a house, a lovely estate sale in Ditmas Park, a 2-family, needs some work. And my suspicion is if we were under the old system, it probably would have been sold in one open house or at most 2, and we'd be done already. But now it's much more complicated, and people didn't have to make appointments. Like today, we have a second showing for someone that's come before, and I believe we will sell this house at a good price in the next few weeks. But I think it clearly slows down the process. And one of the things we talk about with some frequency is expectations for buyers and sellers. So in this market, though there are probably some properties that are a little different, my suspicion is that things are just, because of the way we have to show, it slows down the process a bit. And, not like very, very long, but it's just a little different dynamic. And it's sort of what we're seeing. We had a 2-bedroom co-op with a roof deck. And actually Matt Kirby-Smith on our team, when we opened up, did an open house, literally did showings for 6 hours. He was exhausted, but we did sell that apartment rather quickly. And now we have an accepted offer and contracts are out. So, I just think it's sort of interesting working under these conditions. And it is changing how we do business. But for the most part, I think the market is quite healthy. And people, despite all the sort of talk out there about people fleeing the city, it's not what we're seeing. Within a week, we had an offer on our house in Sunset Park, and we're expecting another offer today. Excuse me. So I would also say, which we've talked about previously, having outdoor space, which was always a positive, is now a really big positive. Given the events of the last 4 months, it's something people appreciate even more. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, who will get into the data more. And then if there are any questions, we're happy to answer them. And if you have questions that you think of later, you can always email us at the scottkleinteam@compass.com. Go ahead, Paul.
And Scott, I think after I talk about some of this data, I want to come back to that point about people leaving the city. Because I do think people are leaving the city.
Sure.
But also people are moving within the city and people are coming to the city.
I agree with you.
So I just want to come back and talk about that. But first, let's talk. And, this is interesting because Grant just left a message on Facebook talking about how on the West Coast, the market's so hot on fire. And that is because of really tight inventory. But
Got
what we're going to talk about right now is actually how there's actually quite a bit of inventory, and it's actually starting to build up. So let's talk. Let me share my screen. I just went through and I ran Market Watch, obviously with Compass. Compass has this great tool for us called Market Watch that makes it really easy to see what's happening in pretty much real time with any particular kind of property in any kind of neighborhood. So in Brooklyn, you can see here, this is what's happened over the last 60 days. First of all, like what's happening in the last 7 days, the last 30 days, the last 60 days. And really what I'm looking at here is the new listings, the number of contracts out and signed. So these yellow dots here. I think it's also interesting to look at price reductions. Okay. So actually, if you look at these numbers across Brooklyn, I did a little bit of math, and so it has slowed down a little bit in terms of absorption. Absorption meaning when, something that's available, like how much is available and new coming to market versus what's getting eaten up and going into contract. So absorption, the ratio of contracts signed to new listings in the past 60 days overall was 26%. But in the last week, that's dropped to 22%, 22.5%. So that means new listings are coming to market at a faster pace than contracts are going out and being signed in all of Brooklyn overall. And I think my numbers the numbers bear out in the other neighborhoods that we're looking at here too. This is the numbers for the neighborhoods where our team works. We cover a lot of Brooklyn, but Brooklyn is huge. And so this is, for example, North Brooklyn, Central Brooklyn, Northwest Brooklyn, and then down through Sunset Park into Bay Ridge, and then also on the other side of the park over in Ditmas and Lefferts Gardens and Flatbush. And these numbers are similar. I think in the neighborhoods where we work, it's a little bit better. The absorption rate is a little faster, but just slightly faster. It's still there. In North Brooklyn, it's then Williamsburg, Greenpoint, East Williamsburg, Bushwick. It is a little bit faster still. You got 24% of 24. You got 18 contracts signed versus 73 new listings in the last 7 days. That's 23%. No, 24%, which is a little better. Northwest Brooklyn, interestingly, it slowed down a lot in the last 7 days in terms of the number of contracts signed relative to the new listings. Now, what seems to be moving much better than anything else is, brownstones in the neighborhoods where we mainly sell houses, right? So Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, Prospect Heights, Park Slope, Windsor Terrace. The ratios, for example, for all of Brooklyn, right? In the last 60 days, you had 26% of contracts relative to new listings. In the last 7 days, it was 22.5% contracts versus new listings. But for brownstones, in the last 60 days, it was 34% contracts to new listings. And in the last 7 days is actually 27% contracts to new listings. So brownstones, single family and 2-family brownstones are moving a lot better. Still inventory is building up. Yeah, but still inventory is building up. I mean, when you have more than twice as many new listings as contracts signed, that just means that people's options, but it is a good time to be a buyer. If you're a buyer, you have options. Interest rates are low. If you're a buyer, you have new options every day. And if you're a
Well,
seller, then it's really important, right? Like, yeah, your house might take a little longer. If you wanted to sell fast, then you have to make a big impression right away because people are going to have other options. Either that, or you just have to be more realistic about how long your sale is going to take.
right. I mean, I think, again, which I spoke to at the beginning, if this were a normal market and all these things were coming to market, people would spend a Sunday. Not that they can't do it, but it's harder now. That, you know, you have to make a lot of arrangements and you have to really figure out a schedule because we're only doing appointments. So if it were a normal market, you would sort of create a map and you would go from one place to the other and wouldn't tell anyone. And if you decided to change your mind and you wanted to add a property, you could do it. You can't do that now. You know, so I think there is a lot of inventory now, and it's sort of more cumbersome to see it. But I think what you just spoke to, Paul, is also very important, that buyers really now have a lot of choices. So, you know, and I think we do see people seeing a lot more properties and sort of just taking their time making a decision. Hey, look, it's not like buying a shirt. You know, this is probably the most important, you know, this and maybe your significant other are the two most important decisions you might make in your life. So you should take your time in doing this. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting. You know, the other interesting thing, obviously, is that if this were a normal market, we would tell people now not to put their property on the market. And that's not what we're telling people because of the shutdown. So I think we're going to see people looking all through August. There won't, you know, maybe it'll slow down the last 2 weeks around Labor Day. And then I suspect, and the other thing is kids aren't going back to school in the way they were in the past. So that also changes the fall dynamic. I mean, the fall is anyone's guess and people have their theories about it. But yeah, I mean, I think people obviously held off on their inventory until we opened up. And now we're seeing a lot of new inventory. That's what the numbers say, correct?
That's what the numbers say. Yeah. We had that interesting compass discussion the other day about, okay, so inventory is building up, but do you wait or not? If you're a seller, do you wait or not? Right. And what I wanted to note is, I have a lot of rentals coming out because there's a bunch of condo owners who are looking at their situation and they're who are looking at their situation and they don't want to sell right now. They're thinking, they're debating, should we rent our place out now or should we sell it now? And a fair number of people are thinking we'll wait to sell, right?
Right.
Makes sense to me because I think in a couple of years, market values are I think we're gonna be in a much better market for sellers, right? But there's a lot of rentals now. I mean, Matt and I were doing some numbers for a potential rental in Carroll Gardens, and when I looked at the numbers, the number of comparable apartments on June 16th, a week before the restart happened, before phase 2 started, and then the week after phase 2 started, the number of rentals on Street Easy doubled of comps.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that doesn't even account for, there's also a lot of people who are online, trying to rent their places out themselves online on Facebook, right? I don't think that's a great idea. I mean, I think that especially when there's so much inventory, if you want to get your place rented out, you should work with somebody who is going to do a really good job of marketing your place and, attracting people. But yeah. What do you think?
No, I think, look, our rentals are moving. They really are. I think that's
Matt just booked his, the one that he was doing with Cornelia.
Yeah, they just rented it, I believe. Deb's been moving her rentals very well. Brian Blessinger is moving his rentals. They're moving.
Yeah,
I see it because I obviously see the deals when they go into Deal Closer,
right.
and things are moving. I mean, it's sort of interesting, but I think the information is more out there now. I mean, I think people were, a lot of people when as we were opening up, I got some like Facebook notes from people saying, can I get a bargain? And my answer was, I don't really see it happening.
Maybe,
And
maybe.
and
I would say maybe you could get a bargain. I think I think with my buyers, I'm advising them. I don't think you can count on it, but I think what we're seeing, right, and hearing from other agents is that this market is very frothy, right? Like, and kind of unpredictable and sometimes counterintuitive, right? So I think if you're a buyer, you should cast some lines out and see if you can get any nibbles. I
no,
mean,
I'm not opposing that. I wouldn't have that expectation. That's what I'm saying.
yeah, I mean, I don't think everybody can expect that they can get something for 30% off. But
No,
I think if you're a buyer and if you're creative, right? If you have an imagination, then like I mean I was looking at some listings for a buyer last night, right? And this place that I saw is a solid buy. It's a solid purchase, right? Solid condo, a good layout, decent neighborhood, could live there for a while. It could become an investment property in the future. The photos are terrible. Like the walls are that like early 2000s kind of like orange. You know what I mean? And like it's virtually staged in a really fake way. And at first they're like, this doesn't really inspire us. Like we don't really like this. But that's exactly like where you're going to be able to find a discount because
yes, yes.
they're doing a bad job of marketing, even though it's potentially a very good apartment.
Yes, that I mean, I think that's always been the case, but it's more true now. Um, yeah, I mean, this is sort of a sad reality of our business is that, um, unfortunately, there are people who represent properties and really don't put their best foot forward. And it is an advantage to buyers when that occurs because, I mean, actually, interestingly enough, when we sold an apartment in my co-op in Bay Ridge and the buyers were looking in New Jersey, they found a house that the photographs were horrible. And it was actually a very nice house. And really, no one was looking at it. And they were able to buy that house at a bit of a discount, and it was actually a perfect house for them. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, these stories are true. And I would say, if anyone's watching and is thinking of selling their property, I can't emphasize enough
Yeah.
how important it is to. Paul is in a vacant apartment that we staged at 904 Pacific Street before
Well, my
the open.
background is. My
Oh,
background.
I see. Oh, I thought you went over there already. Oh,
No, no,
how
no,
could
no.
you?
These are
Oh,
just
it
my
doesn't
background.
start
Otherwise,
till
you would see
noon.
my messy bedroom.
Okay, so that's an apartment we staged, and you know, we've got nothing but accolades, and we've also have amazing original art in there, which is something new for us, and it has made a huge difference. And hopefully, we have had a lot of interest. We're waiting on some offers, but another agent might have just virtually staged that apartment, left it in the condition the tenants left it in, and then tried to get a high price and would have been sadly disappointed. So what, Paul and I took over a brownstone, or not a brownstone, a townhouse in Park Slope that had been virtually staged, and it was a big house, and people walked into the house and it was empty. You can't sell a house at a good price that way. It doesn't exist. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, even though this is not completely on topic here, but it is a little bit because of what Paul said, that if you see an apartment that has terrible pictures and has not been repainted and seems really unappealing to a lot of buyers, but it's an apartment you could probably do well with, you may have a chance of getting a very good price.
Maybe.
And that's
Yeah. I mean, this place, I actually told these buyers a couple, like 2 or 3 months ago, I told them, when the market comes back, if part of this is like you want to get a good deal on something, right? Then let's look at places that have like a decent location, good light, but where the kitchen hasn't been done in a little while. It's like a good kitchen, but all you got to do is replace the cabinets and maybe the backsplash and put some new doors on the cabinets, right? Like that's not an expensive renovation,
no.
but like the discount that you'll get probably because other buyers aren't going to make a move on it because they don't have the imagination to see what it would look like. Like, I think it'd be worth it.
Right. No, and I think there are instances.
But it's hard. I mean, it's hard, right? Like even when Lily and I bought our co-op at a great deal, right? And Lily's mom and I both saw what it was going to look like in our imaginations. Like Lily couldn't imagine it, right? And then until we actually finished it, right? And I think a lot of I think it's hard for most people who don't do real estate every day like we do, to imagine it. And I mean, like you said, they're making the biggest purchase of their lives, right? I mean, that can be hard to do, like to go see an apartment, not be super excited about the way that it looks, but decide, yeah, I'm going to buy this for 1.1 million.
Right. Sure. I mean, look, I've been doing this for a while now, and I've been shocked over the years by really a lot of people's lack of imagination that, frankly, I've probably sold, apartments with really nice furniture that I think were somewhat problematic in a variety of ways, and people just like the furniture. But I think, on the other hand, I would say this: as time has gone on, certainly since I've been doing this, buyers are even that much more sophisticated, and there is a lot more information out there. So, it is in certain ways easier to gauge the market and sort of what you're up against, and trying to do the best for yourself. Obviously, having a good agent helps. But there is a lot of information out there, and it's helpful. I mean, our job when we're representing buyers is really to guide them in a whole variety of ways. One of the other reasons you should have a buyer's agent is, especially if you're buying into like a co-op, a lot of us have a lot of institutional knowledge about these buildings in Brooklyn, and we could stop you from getting involved if we think the building might have some problems. And I've been doing this long enough that I know a lot of these buildings. So years ago, I had a situation where a person went through the whole process without an agent at a building in Kensington, which I think is in better shape now, and then called me up and said, I think I need you because I wasted a lot of time. I said, yeah, I would have told you from the get-go, you probably don't want to buy in that building. So, and he did buy from me another apartment in Kensington, and now they have like a 6-month-old Tina's wife,
Right.
Who's adorable. So, all this is important. I think, again, if I'll give our email address again, I mentioned it earlier. We are here to help you, whether you're selling, whether you're buying. Again, as Paul said, knowledge is very powerful here. And you really want to, whether you're selling or buying, start with a place of a very significant knowledge. So again, our email is the scottkleinteam@compass.com. We have a diverse team. Even if you're renting or have an apartment to rent, we picked up a rental last week from the Facebook site Park Slope Together, a really beautiful apartment on 7th Street that should be up next week. So, we're really here to give you guidance. That's what we're here for. And are there any questions, Paul?
Let's see. Grant has some interesting information here about what's happening out in the Bay Area. Obviously, it's a different market than what we're undergoing. It has been for a few years now. Interestingly, I have a bunch of people who are moving over here from California right now.
Moving
So
here.
yeah, because basically they want to be in no, I love San Francisco, but they want to be in New York. New York is
Right.
like that's like the city,
Right.
right? Right. Like in San Francisco,
Well,
they call it the city. In New York, we call it the city, but really,
uh,
what's the city? New York is the
no,
city.
it's a very different thing.
Right.
Now,
Uh,
you said you
Grant
wanted to
Grant
talk.
does also say, maybe there's a rhetorical question. He says, "Aren't bargains always possible?" Well, I would say yes, bargains are always possible. I think this is a good time here, maybe to find more bargains than like in a couple of years. I think we're going to be in a much better market for sellers, and
Right.
I think people are going to be rushing back to New York to be a part of, you know, be a part of New York City, post COVID, and the arts and the culture and the people and the neighborhoods and the, walking down to the corner store and, bumping into, the like knowing the guy or the woman who owned the shop down the street. I mean, that's what I love here.
Sure. Look, in terms of an American city, there is no other place like it. Nothing, I think, even comes close. Chicago has the most beautiful architecture, and San Francisco has the most beautiful setting. But, in terms of the other thing that makes New York special is the diversity of the economy. You don't have this diverse economy in any other American city. And if anything, things are going the other way. Places like San Francisco and Seattle are not as interesting because you're dominated by an industry. I
Right.
would, as much as I like Washington, D.C., which I do, it's a company town, as is L.A.
Right.
So the thing, I remember years ago, I dated a guy who was a dresser in the theater. And there's no other city in the United States where someone can make a living as a dresser in the theater. Probably the only other city in the world is London. So, that's what distinguishes us. And I agree. I think what we're going to, also look, we've done a good job with COVID. I mean, what's going on in many of other parts of the country is horrible. And in a positive note, I was under the impression in traveling to Maine that I would have to take a COVID test. But if you're from New York and you're staying in like a private accommodation, not in someone's house,
Yeah.
you don't have to take a COVID test.
Yeah, it's true.
Um,
New Jersey is doing very well. I think in the city, we're doing pretty well. I
right.
mean, I
New
see a lot of
Jersey
masks.
actually is doing incredibly well.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know
but
about upstate so much. Upstate, I'm not so sure.
yeah, no, look, it's a very difficult situation, obviously. And I mean, the other day there was a statistic that in Miami-Dade County, of the people that were tested, 33% tested positive. That's a totally frightening statistic.
That's
I mean,
crazy. We're a 13-person team at this point, right? That means like four of us.
that's correct. I mean, it's crazy. So, I think we are lucky. And I think New York will come back. And I think we will see people leave. But I think we will see a lot of people that don't leave and a lot of people coming to the city. And, to reiterate what you said before, I mean, interest rates now are extremely low.
Yeah,
The
it's crazy.
lowest I think I've ever seen. So
I think, right? Didn't Mike say that one of his buyers got 1.875%
on a
on a
on,
10-1
a
arm?
10-year arm, yeah,
Yeah.
that's like ridiculous. I believe the people that are buying Matt's apartment got like 2.75% 30-year fix.
Wow.
These rates are ridiculous. So, and I should mention also that the apartment that is the backdrop of Paul's screen, that building still has a tax abatement until 2037.
Yeah.
So that's also, when you're buying a condo, that's important information as well. How long, if there is a tax abatement, and for how long there is. Let's see, how are we on time? We're pretty good. Is
Shep
there
has a
anything else?
question. Shep says, which real estate team would you say is the most diverse, nice, and deep in the city?
Who asked that?
Shep.
Oh, I would say that would be us, but I could be wrong. But yeah, thank you, Shep. That was a good lob there. That was a good. We appreciate that. I think if there, I just wanted to wish everyone, our team, good open houses by appointment today. And we're not, it's not confirmed, but we're planning to have a very interesting webinar Wednesday night. We'll give you more information once it's confirmed. Paul, anything else you wanted to add?
No, we have a lot of content right now. We've done a lot of webinars, I think. So people can check out on YouTube, like we've got everything archived.
Yes.
We had a very interesting one about fixer uppers. Actually, I should mention, because we talked about, where you can potentially get a deal. And Shep did a really good webinar where we did a walkthrough of an apartment with some architects.
At the Seaport.
Yeah, the Seaport. So yeah, no, I have a great day.
All right, everyone, have a great Sunday. Enjoy your day. Thank you, Paul.
Yep. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.